Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the powdered, perfumed, and wildly impractical world of Versailles in the 1700s. Picture candlelight flickering off gilded mirrors, silk slippers whispering across marble floors, and wigs, so many wigs, rising like frosted mountains on every noble head. But you're not here to dance at the masquerade or flirt with courtiers under chandeliers. No, you're here for the hair, because you're the royal wig duster, and you probably won't survive the week. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up wedged between a velvet curtained broom closet and the place where someone once tried to store an entire taxidermied deer. The air smells faintly of old talcum, cheap brandy, and the peculiar blend of mold and molasses that comes from being underneath 50 pounds of other people's hair. Literally. Above your cot, a shelf holds 3 rows of retired wigs, all grayish white, all glaring down at you with the judgmental silence of powdered ghosts. One of them might have belonged to a duke who died mid minuet. One of them almost certainly still has his dandruff. You're not entirely sure which. You don't ask. Your bed, or rather your nap slab, is a wooden crate with a sheet on it. The pillow is stuffed with cast-off horsehair. It's soft, in the same way a raccoon is polite, but you sleep anyway, curled like a shrimp in last season's livery coat, because your shift starts long before sunrise, and dreams of comfortable mattresses are reserved for dukes, duchesses, and extremely spoiled dogs. You're jolted awake by the usual 4 a.m. palace soundscape, muffled yelling, a servant dropping silverware 4 halls away, and someone sobbing quietly in the pastry wing. There's also the faint pop 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 of the wig ovens heating up. Yes, wig ovens. Versailles is not subtle. You rise with the grace of a man who slept 4 hours and just remembered his entire career depends on fluffing a stranger's headpiece to resemble an over-ambitious souffle. Slipping into your uniform, you tie on the apron that's already gray with powder. Your fingers are stained with pomade and beeswax. Your lungs prepare themselves for another day of lightly suffocating glamour. Now it's time to dust. Your first job of the morning is to inventory and freshen the previous day's wigs, dozens of them. They sit in their designated cubbies like school children awaiting judgment. Some are limp, some are stiff, and one has clearly had a rough night at the opera. There's a distinctive smell to a wig that's been danced in, smoked in, and cried into, like lavender, musk, and mild despair. You take your brush, a special boar bristle thing shaped like a soup ladle, and begin the delicate process of depowdering yesterday's styles without removing all the shape. These wigs are architectural feats, bouffants, fontanges, periwigs, coiffure with names longer than your childhood. Some of them are taller than a wine bottle. One is so wide it once knocked a footman unconscious during a curtsy gone wrong. You gently pat each one down with a linen cloth, whispering apologies as you go. Not to the wigs, to your lungs, because every puff releases another cloud of rice powder, chalk dust, and whatever it is they use to make the Duke of Burgundy's hairpieces smell like expensive goose. Historians still argue whether this early form of dry shampooing was more for hygiene or just dramatic flair. Probably both. What's certain is that Wig powder in the 1700s wasn't just messy, it was dangerous. Many of the finest powders contained lead. Yes, lead, as in brain melting neurotoxin. You sneeze softly into your elbow. It comes out vaguely glittery. That's fine. There's also the matter of vermin. Mice love wigs. The warmth, the softness, the cozy interior space. It's like a five-star rodent hotel. You once caught a whole family nesting inside a powdered masterpiece meant for the Bishop of Lyons. You had to choose between evicting them or pretending it was a new fashion statement. You chose the mice. They were quieter. A footman arrives to collect the day's first selection, the Dauphin's morning wig. This one is sleek, not too towering, with just the right amount of rosette. You hand it over like it's a holy relic, because if that thing topples on the prince's head mid breakfast, guess who gets reassigned to latrine duty? Spoiler, it's not the footman. You return to your cleaning table, where another wig awaits. This one smells like cinnamon, rum, and secrets. You brush it gently. It hums with the memory of scandal, probably worn at a masked ball where someone danced too closely with someone they definitely shouldn't have. By now, your eyes are watering from powder exposure. Your fingers ache from curling irons, but the day's just begun, and you haven't even reached the queen's wing yet. You shuffle down the hallway with your tray of curling irons, pomade jars, and fresh powder cones like a waiter at a particularly judgmental brunch. The queen's wig vault looms ahead, two heavy doors gilded with cherubs and secrets. Inside, a room bigger than your entire childhood village, filled top to bottom with shelves of hair. Each wig has its own name, its own personality, and its own emotional baggage. Today, she's requested La Victoire, which is ironic because this towering puff of shellacked curls and delicate pearls once collapsed mid-tea, taking a tray of eclairs and an entire ambassador's dignity with it. You remember, you were holding the comb when it happened. You haven't unclenched since. You open the vault door and are hit with a wave of floral oil, cedarwood, and lightly mummified hair mousse. The wigs are perched on stands like resting opera singers. A few have collapsed sideways. One is still smoking, slightly from last night's candle incident. You try not to look at it. That was a rough evening. Someone cried. Someone else threw a fig. You find La Victoire and lift it gently with both hands, like you're transporting a sleeping possum in formal wear. It's heavier than it looks. Wigs at this level of nobility aren't so much headpieces as they are infrastructure. Steel wires, wooden frames, loops of horsehair wound like angry noodles. You once found a pastry hidden inside one, unbitten. You set it on the queen's prep stand, and your assistant, an 11-year-old with the hands of a pickpocket and the attention span of a gnat, starts warming the curling tongs over a small flame. You don't let him speak, not because you're strict, but because you're pretty sure his voice shakes the hair fibers. As the irons heat, you begin the tedious task of refluffing the front bouffant, which must be exactly 3 inches high and 2 inches forward, or the queen says she feels like a cabbage in profile. You've never seen a cabbage wear pearls, but you nod respectfully each time. You dab on fresh powder, carefully. Too much and she'll cough, too little and you'll hear about it. For hours. Possibly from her lapdog, who seems to communicate via barks and passive-aggressive yawns. You give the wig a gentle pat. A soft poof of powder floats upward. It's snowing inside again. The queen arrives in a swish of silk and opinions. Her face is a flawless canvas of rouge, mercury-laced eyeliner, and hope. She eyes the wig. Then she eyes you. Hmm, she says, which in Versailles means either well done or prepare for exile. She sits. You bow. The palace cat strolls in, sneezes into a powdered puff, and strolls back out. This, somehow, is your fault. You begin attaching the wig to her natural hair. What little of it remains. You use a combination of pins, ties, prayer, and 3 silk ribbons. The process takes 27 minutes. During this time, she tells you a full story involving an opera singer, a spilled goblet of wine, and a very flexible diplomat from Genoa. You nod appropriately, even when confused. Especially then, historians still argue whether noble women wore such elaborate wigs every single day or saved them for events. Based on your wrists, your hunch is daily, and based on your dreams, they haunt you. Finally, the wig is secure. You dust off her shoulders, adjust the pearl comb, and retreat backward at the perfect angle. Never turn your back on royalty. That's how you end up polishing chamber pots. You exhale once in the hallway, then immediately stop, because now comes the terrifying part, transporting the spares. You have 3 more wigs to deliver across the palace. One for the Duchesse de Polignac, morning poetry reading. One for Madame du Barry, scandal brunch. And one emergency backup wig for a count who insists on fencing with a full head of curls. You carry them stacked on a satin pillow like a sad wedding cake. As you round a corner, a valet dashes past chasing a goose in a ruffled collar. You sidestep, nearly colliding with a page boy holding a tray of hot broth. The hallway is a war zone. Versailles always is. You say a quiet prayer to Saint Anthony, patron of lost objects, which probably includes your sanity. You reach the second salon. The Duchess is waiting in a cloud of perfume and existential boredom. You place the wig gently on her head as she reads aloud from a book of sonnets and pretends not to notice you. The wig settles perfectly. You are dismissed with a hand wave so slight it could be mistaken for a wrist cramp. Back in the hallway, you sneeze again. Wig powder has invaded every crevice of your face. You're pretty sure you just coughed out the Enlightenment. You finally return to the wig room. It's 9 a.m., only 14 more hours to go. By the time you stumble back into the wig room, the sun has begun to creep lazily over the Versailles courtyards, glinting off gold statues that look a little too smug for this hour. You'd stop to admire it, but you're currently balancing 6 empty wig stands, 1 pair of blistered feet, and the overwhelming urge to lie flat on the parquet floor and declare yourself a decorative rug. Instead, you grab a damp cloth, dab at the powder on your sleeves, and begin prepping for your next appointment, the king. Now, dusting His Majesty's wig isn't just another line on your to-do list. It's an event, a ceremony, a daily brush with political danger wrapped in silk ribbon and smug authority. His wig, affectionately known among staff as the Big One, is a towering monument to ego and outdated fashion. We're talking cascading curls, fluffed sides, volume that could block doorways. Legend says it once stopped a falling book from hitting his head. Another time, it nearly smothered a visiting ambassador. You've seen birds eye it like a potential nesting site, but none of that matters. What matters is that every strand is perfect, that not one curl droops, that the powdered shine reflects exactly the right amount of arrogance and divine right to rule. You wheel the Big One into the warming chamber, a small side room filled with soft cloths, silver combs, and the lingering scent of rosemary, vinegar, and burnt wool. Why burnt wool? That's a long story involving last Easter. a poorly timed sneeze, and a candle you now pretend never existed. You light the warming brazier, gently rotate the wig, and mutter the sacred words, "Please don't shed," because the king's wig is made of actual human hair, donated, stolen, purchased, who knows? And once it starts unraveling, no powder puff in France can save you. While the wig warms, you prepare the dressing tray, ivory handled brushes, glass jars of bear fat pomade, and two silk cloths, so delicate they might be offended by your fingerprints. You also include the cologne cone, a hollowed out lemon stuffed with cloves and rosemary that gets waved near His Majesty's nose to keep him from gagging on his own perfumed scalp. This is the glamour people imagine when they think of Versailles: elegance, extravagance, and a whole lot of deeply buried lice. You slide the dressing tray into the salon just as the king is finishing his morning ablutions, which involve warm towels, five attendants, and what you suspect is passive aggressive humming from a bored flautist. His head is currently bald, gleaming, and slightly sweaty. You do not comment on this. Instead, you bow. Take the warmed wig with both hands and begin the placement process. This part is trickier than it looks. The wig must be centered, slightly forward to give an air of wisdom, but not so much that he looks surprised. Too far back, and he'll resemble an unimpressed turtle. You aim for noble gravitas, with just a hint of "I could crush a rebellion before lunch." You secure the ties under his chin, fluff the temple curls, and step back. He nods without looking at you, which is code for acceptable. You may continue breathing today. Historians still debate whether royal wigs served more as fashion or status, but you've been here long enough to know it's both. The bigger the wig, the more important the wearer. Wigs are power. Wigs are politics. And sometimes, wigs are how you find out who's been sleeping with whom based on which style was borrowed, altered, or suddenly lost. But for now, you survived the fitting without incident, which is a miracle. Last month, a rival wig servant sneezed mid-adjustment and knocked His Majesty's favorite curl askew. He now polishes doorknobs in the East Wing and speaks only in whispers. You leave the king's salon and nearly walk straight into a running soprano clutching a broken hairpin and screaming about betrayal. You sidestep, narrowly avoid disaster, and duck into the nearest storage corridor to catch your breath. It smells like cinnamon, mothballs, and whatever's living behind the tapestry. You rest your hands on your knees. Breathe in. Breathe out. Immediately regret breathing, because now comes the worst part of the morning: the Petit Trianon, transfer run. This involves carrying no fewer than 4 wigs, 2 cases of powdered cones, and a flask of pine-scented oil across 3 wings, 1 garden, and a hallway currently under siege by a ferret with a vendetta. Why the Petit Trianon needs wigs today is unclear. Possibly another secret poetry duel, or perhaps Marie Antoinette is playing shepherdess again, and her fake flock requires matching curls. You load the cart, you brace your back, you begin the trek. As you wheel your precious cargo down the flagstone hallway, every crack, every bump threatens to jostle the wigs into chaotic mayhem. You hum softly to calm yourself. Maybe something by Lully, maybe just your own heartbeat. Outside, the sun finally shines, and for a fleeting moment, you allow yourself to think, maybe today, no one will light a wig on fire. Then a guard sneezes in your direction, and you realize you've just been lightly seasoned with snuff. Again. But you press on, because you're a royal wig duster in Versailles. You have 5 wigs to deliver, 2 hands, and the lung capacity of a man who's been inhaling talc since adolescence. And no matter what happens, whether a duchess cries, a pigeon lands in the count's curls, or the queen decides she prefers just a touch more fluff, you'll keep brushing, powdering, and surviving until the next sneeze. You've made it past the statue courtyard, the goose-laced arcade, and the hallway where that one tapestry always falls if you breathe too hard near it. You're now at the gates of the Petit Trianon, a miniature palace built so the queen could pretend to be a simple milkmaid, a milkmaid with marble floors and 16 gardeners. You push your wig cart along the gravel path, which is neither smooth nor forgiving. Every bump is a test of your balancing skills, your patience, and your ability to suppress a scream. One wrong jolt, and the Duke of Anjou's mid-morning curls become tomorrow's mystery mulch. Inside the Petit Trianon, everything smells aggressively of lilacs and ambition. Servants dart past with trays of tea cakes. Musicians tune harps with expressions of profound suffering. Somewhere, someone is arguing about the poetic merits of goose feathers. You're ushered into the queen's private dressing chamber by a chambermaid wearing slippers with more embroidery than your entire childhood wardrobe. She looks at your tray like it might bite her. You give a polite bow, present the required wig, and watch as it's taken gently, gently into another room. You don't get to place the queen's leisure wig yourself. Only Madame Bertin, royal dressmaker and occasional tyrant, is allowed that honor. You're just the guy who cleaned it, who brushed every curl, who removed 2 twigs, 1 rose petal, and what you're fairly sure was a moth with artistic ambitions. You wait by the door. Sometimes they call you back in to adjust a wave or add a feather. Other times they forget you entirely, and you stand there for 45 minutes trying not to sneeze on a curtain. This time, a footman informs you that Her Majesty is quite pleased, which is both a compliment and a warning not to mess up tomorrow. As you're turning to go, he adds, "Oh, and bring the peacock plume next time." She's feeling theatrical. You make a mental note. You have no idea where the peacock plume is. Probably in the Duke of Chartres' private wig vault, wedged between a swan feather and something that may or may not be a stolen boa. You trundle your cart back to the main palace, now partially empty and covered in powder dust. A light wind kicks up. You cover the wigs like they're fragile pastries. Rain is your mortal enemy. Versailles does not offer umbrella benefits to wig staff. And yes, it's happened before. A sudden drizzle, a mad dash across the gravel, a wig so saturated it collapsed like an overcooked souffle. The Duchess in question didn't speak to anyone for 3 days. The wig was never recovered. You arrive back at the main wig room and stash the cart. Your assistant is supposed to be sorting the powder cones, but instead he's trying to stack them into a tiny replica of the palace. He drops the north wing. You sigh. He sneezes. The room turns briefly into a blizzard. You confiscate the cones and set him to brushing out the Count of Toulouse's riding wig, which smells faintly of saddle leather and garlic. Meanwhile, you tackle the next horror, Mouse Patrol. See, wigs are not just status symbols. They are warm, cozy, and apparently delicious real estate for small creatures, especially if someone forgot to shake them out after a garden party, or if your assistant left one too close to the plum tarts again. You lift the first suspect wig with care. Nothing scurries out, but you hear a faint nibble, nibble, a sure sign that the silk ribbons have become dinner. You peer into the base. 2 bright eyes blink back. A tiny mouse, wearing what looks like a crumb on its head, possibly attempting its own wig. You remove it with practiced grace, using the special scoop, really just a spoon from the pastry wing, and deposit the intruder into the palace courtyard. It scampers away toward the kitchens. You respect its hustle. Mice aren't the only issue. Sometimes wigs absorb too much candle smoke, or perfume, or human sorrow. You have to air them out overnight, hanging them like ghostly helmets on a rack near the east corridor windows. You once forgot one out there too long. It blew into a duchess's carriage and caused a minor scandal. You still get asked about the haunted wig incident. Historians still argue whether servants like you had any upward mobility in the court. And to that, you laugh, softly, while dabbing brandy on a grease stain. You're more likely to become a court rumor than a courtier. Still, there's power in your role. You hear things in the hallways, in the salons. While fluffing locks and adjusting ribbons, you pick up whispers. Who's planning what? Who's in favor? Who mysteriously disappeared after insulting the king's mistress's parrot? And speaking of parrots, one now resides in the Marquise de Gravel's chambers. It wears a miniature wig. You made it, against your will. It still squawks, Vive la poudre, every time someone walks past. You check the schedule board. Afternoon duties include a wig refresh for the bishop, a style adjustment for the Spanish ambassador's wife, and a quick brush out for the royal portrait painter's model, who insists on wearing a different hairpiece for every sitting. You suspect she's trying to become immortal in 3 separate wigs. You gulp some cold tea, shake out your sleeves, and head for the bishop's quarters, humming softly to yourself. Just another powder-filled day in paradise. The bishop's quarters are tucked in a quieter wing of the palace, a place where the tapestries are older, the candles burn lower, and the whispers have a slightly Latin flavor. You knock gently and are greeted by a young valet who looks like he hasn't blinked in 3 hours. His Grace is finishing his prayers, the valet whispers, like the bishop's holiness might be startled by volume. The wig is ready. You're shown into the dressing room, where the bishop's ceremonial periwig waits on a velvet cushion like a pious souffle. It's an enormous coiled piece of artistry, 4-tiered, powdered to a chalky perfection, with delicate silk ribbons that match the color of his ecclesiastical robes. It smells like rosewater, incense, and oddly, bread. You begin the gentle process of freshening it. The bishop, you've learned, prefers his curls arranged symmetrically with a slight forward tilt that makes him appear perpetually contemplative. You once got the angle wrong by a quarter inch, and he spent an entire sermon looking like he'd just heard a very confusing prophecy. With gloved hands, you fluff the bottom tier and lightly dab the powder puff across the top, enough to restore the holy gleam without triggering another chapel-wide coughing fit. You pluck a stray feather from the left side, probably from the parrot again, or perhaps from the Duchess's absurd hat that's been molting like a judgmental turkey all week. Just as you're adjusting the final curl, the bishop himself enters. He nods in your direction, then settles into his ornate chair with the grace of a man who's carried the weight of salvation and 40 pounds of hair. Please ensure it doesn't droop during Vespers, he murmurs, as if the fate of his soul depends on the lift of his sideburns. Of course, Your Grace, you reply, with the solemnity of a man who once recurled a wig during a lightning storm. You secure the wig in place, giving it a slight twist at the temples, then retreat as silently as you came. Outside, you check your powder-covered hands. You have 10 more heads to prep by sundown. Your fingers look like you've been petting a haunted chalkboard. Your next stop is the Spanish ambassador's wife, who is famously fond of flair. Her wig today is what can only be described as a sculpted miniature garden. You're not kidding. It has silk flowers, trailing vines made of dyed horsehair, and a tiny porcelain bird nestled in the upper left curl. It chirps when jostled. You set the wig carefully on its styling stand and begin brushing it out. Somewhere in the curls is a remnant of last night's supper, possibly a fig. You remove it gently and make a mental note. No fruit themed curls before meals. This wig is enormous. It's not just tall, it's top heavy. You once calculated that if she leaned forward too quickly, she could knock over a chaise, possibly an entire diplomat. You reinforce the structure with extra ribbons and a discreet brass comb. Versailles fashion is equal parts aesthetics and structural engineering. As you work, you overhear two chambermaids whispering in the hallway. It is said he brought her chocolates from Vienna, but really it was just sugared chestnuts. And she wore the sapphire wig twice in 1 week. So naturally people started talking. Ah, the Duc de la Rochefoucauld's wig was tilted. Tilted! At the ambassador's banquet. You smile to yourself. Court gossip travels faster than the footman, and you, by virtue of your job, are the grand central station of scandalous air currents. Everyone talks while their hair is being styled. Everyone. Historians still argue whether servants like you were invisible or all seeing. You know the truth, both. You're ignored until a curl droops. Then suddenly, you're the most important person in the room. Until the next misstep. Then you're dust. You finish with the ambassador's wife's wig and send it off via a highly nervous page who walks like he's carrying a porcelain goose. You wish him luck and hope the curls survive transit. Back in the wig room, your assistant is eating a pastry suspiciously similar to the one served in the ambassador's wing. You raise an eyebrow. He swears it was found. You confiscate it anyway and feed it to the parrot, who now alternates between Vive la Poudre and Ooh la la sticky fingers. You sit for exactly 7 minutes and let your spine contemplate existence. Then it's off to your next task, the portrait wig. The royal portrait artist insists that every model wear a freshly powdered, camera-ready wig. He says it helps the brush strokes. You're pretty sure it's just his excuse to get out of talking to real people. Today's wig is for a young courtier posing as a mythological figure. You've been asked to make the wig appear godlike, which apparently means adding curls that resemble lightning bolts and maybe a small laurel wreath. You do your best. It ends up looking like Zeus went through a fashion phase and discovered glitter. You deliver the wig just in time for the first sitting. The artist sighs, stares at it, then mutters, "Yes, that'll do. He looks sufficiently smug." You count that as a win. Back in your workspace, the light is shifting. Long shadows fall across the powdered stands. You can hear musicians tuning for the evening concert and the distant clatter of someone dropping an entire tray of porcelain dishes. Again, you begin cleaning your brushes for the 5th time today. Powder gets everywhere. In your cuffs, in your ears, probably in your dreams. You often wonder what your lungs look like. Probably like a dusted meringue with opinions. And yet, you wouldn't trade this job. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. You are the unsung hero of the coiffured elite. The silent sculptor behind every lofty hairdo. The man who knows how to hide a secret, sew a ribbon, and make a powdered rat's nest look like royal splendor. As the evening bells begin to toll, you sigh, stretch, and prepare for the next batch. Because there's still a midnight wig change for the opera gala. And you, poor soul, are on the schedule. You barely have time to scrape the powder from beneath your fingernails before you're summoned. Again, a footman appears, out of breath and clutching a velvet card with illegible handwriting and one smudged fleur de lis. Urgent, he says, between wheezes. Opera Gala. Madame de l'Écuyer demands the Rêve d'Argent wig with sapphire ribbons and the glitter netting. You nod, though inwardly you're already spiraling. Rêve d'Argent, the silver dream, is not a wig. It's a declaration of war on time, gravity, and modesty. It's also currently in storage behind three crumbling hat boxes and a disgraced hairpiece that once caught fire during a candlelit gavotte. You return to the vault. The air is heavy with old perfume and the kind of silence that suggests several wigs might be judging you. You locate the silver dream on its special gold-trimmed stand, flanked by two smaller but equally dramatic pieces, and you swear it purrs at you. Or maybe that's just your knees. It's massive. Coils of silver-threaded curls, delicate lace fringe, tiny beadwork accents that took 6 people and one broken engagement to embroider. The glitter netting is somehow both ethereal and aggressively itchy. The sapphire ribbons, still pinned inside the inner lining, rolled tightly like a secret. You place it carefully on your transport tray, double layer the cloth cover, and brace yourself for the walk. You move slowly, reverently, like a man carrying a sleeping swan made entirely of judgment. Versailles at dusk is another beast entirely. The hallways glow with candlelight. Courtiers glide past, their laughter high and hollow. Perfume fogs trail behind duchesses like fragrant contrails of ambition. Every shadow seems to whisper, "Don't trip." You pass the East Gallery, just as the musicians begin tuning for the opera. A violinist adjusts her wig with one hand and gives you a look that says, "You missed a curl last week." You try to smile. It twitches. Finally, you reach Madame de l'Écuyer's dressing chamber. She's reclining on a velvet chaise, 2 greyhounds at her feet, a goblet of sherry in one hand, and an expression of pure, weaponized boredom. "Oh, good," she says without looking up. "You brought the one that doesn't make me look provincial." You suppress a sigh and begin the fitting. The silver dream requires 3 support pins, 2 discreet loops behind the ears, and a whispered incantation. You start with the back, threading the combs through her real hair, which at this point is mostly metaphorical, and tying the sapphire ribbons into a soft cascade that gives the illusion of effortless decadence. She watches you in the mirror like a hawk watching a mouse build a nest on a tightrope. "Higher on the left," she murmurs. "No, your other left." You adjust. Powder. Readjust. The netting catches on your cuff, and for one horrifying moment, you think you've torn it. But no, it's intact. Probably. You don't check. Historians still argue whether wigs like Rêve d'Argent were statements of rebellion, vanity, or sheer architectural marvel. Tonight, it's all 3. Once the wig is secured, she inspects herself from 5 angles. She smiles, barely. You'll be thanked," she says, "and you know that's Versailles. Speak, for you won't be punished." You make your way back to the wig room, palms still tingling from holding that much ambition. Your assistant is asleep inside a storage trunk. You let him be. He'll wake up when someone steps on his foot, probably the cook again. You still have the evening gala prep to finish. 3 musicians, 2 latecomer duchesses, and the Polish envoy's new mistress, who's decided she wants the hairstyle of a goddess, but with feathers. And a message. You start with the musicians. They're grateful, chatty, and only mildly judgmental about their own wigs. One of them asks if you think his new powdered part makes his forehead look too philosophical. You assure him it doesn't. He offers you a caramel. Next, the duchesses. One wants a powdered ringlet refresh. The other wants her wig to smell like lavender and loathing. You dab perfume in the lining and think about your own dreams. Did you ever want to be a wig duster? Not exactly. But now that you're here, you're excellent at it. And being excellent in Versailles means survival. Finally, the Polish envoy's mistress. She's radiant, terrifying, and wearing a corset that might be holding a dagger. Her wig request is bold: a double tiered curl stack with ostrich feathers and a single pearl teardrop, right at the widow's peak. You craft it in silence, letting your fingers guide the curls into position. She watches you with a glass of brandied cherries, occasionally humming something vaguely threatening. When it's finished, she looks at herself, smiles like she's about to declare war, and says, "Perfect. I'll take credit for it, of course." "Of course," you reply. It's nearly midnight when the final wig leaves your tray. You stagger back into the wig room. The lights are low. The air is filled with drifting particles of powder, like the quietest snowfall in France. You sink into a stool, too tired to even untie your apron. Somewhere, a string quartet begins to play. You close your eyes. Your dreams are white, perfumed, and lightly backcombed. You wake up on the floor. Again. At some point in the night, your body must have given up on sitting like a civilized servant and slithered sideways off the stool into a powdered sprawl across the parquet. There's a faint impression of a wig stand on your cheek, and your apron has become a makeshift blanket. You blink, cough softly, talk, as usual, and notice a mouse grooming itself on top of a powdered bouffant. It nods at you. You nod back. Respect. It's 5:12 a.m., and Versailles never truly sleeps. There's already the soft clink of glass, the shuffle of slippered feet, and somewhere in the distance, the unmistakable sound of someone dramatically fainting onto an expensive divan. Probably Lady Marigold. She faints when she's bored, or tipsy, or both. You stretch, bones protesting, and rise to begin the new day's first indignity, cleaning last night's wigs. Because after every gala, every soiree, every candlelit opera of exaggerated size and powdered flirtation comes the aftermath. And the wigs, oh, the wigs, have seen things. You gather the worn pieces into a long velvet-lined tray and start sorting. Some are merely tousled. Others look like they were caught in a romantic duel between two powdered gentlemen and a passing cheese cart. One smells suspiciously of truffle oil and burnt fabric. You make a note to avoid that part of the opera wing. You start with the Queen's second choice gala wig, a majestic swirl of soft curls and subtle lavender ribbons. It's been worn, danced in, and lightly sobbed into, judging by the subtle damp patch near the back comb. You blot it gently with linen and begin the refluffing process. The powder's clumped, the netting's askew, and someone's gold earring is tangled in the side coils. You place it in the rear rehydration chamber, a glorified cabinet with steamed cloth and mild prayer, and move on. Next, the Marquis de Clermont's signature foxtail wig. Yes, foxtail. The man insists on a long, curled queue down his back that resembles an animal in mourning. It's shed a bit, likely during his fourth reenactment of Achilles weeping by the sea. You remove the loose strands, adjust the tail curl, and whisper, "You deserve better." Then comes a masterpiece of absurdity. Madame de Barino's coiffure au chocolat, a towering dessert-inspired monstrosity with faux cherries, real lace, and you suspect actual chocolate. There's a smudge on the right swirl. possibly mousse, possibly despair. You wipe it clean and wonder aloud if maybe she finally found love or just really good cake. Historians still debate whether wigs were ever cleaned properly or simply left to rot in elaborate closets. The answer, as your aching shoulders will confirm, is that you clean them with brushes, oils, vinegar mist, and something you call hope water, which is just lavender steeped in regret. As you clean, you think about the invisible ladder of Versailles, how every curl placed correctly earns you another notch, another nod, another whispered, "He's the one who saved the bishop's sermon curls." And yes, there are promotions, not real ones, but you might be allowed to attend to the prince's valet or help powder a wig during a ceremony, not just before. Prestige, in powdered form. Your assistant shuffles in, yawning, hair askew, still wearing yesterday's socks. You hand him a brush and gesture toward a row of limp curls. He groans. You smile, the universal language of shared suffering. Together, you work through the inventory. By mid morning, the wig room is a buzz of activity. Footmen arrive for pickups. Notes flutter in from across the palace. One from the Dauphin's tutor, wig too heavy, child keeps leaning left. Another from Madame de Moncrief, please fix last night's volume. I look like a frightened pastry. There's also a more ominous note, urgent, King's midday audience with Dutch envoy. Hair must project stability, an unspoken threat. You know exactly which wig that means. You retrieve L'Autorité, a stern, structured piece with vertical volume and no nonsense side curls. It smells of leather, musk, and passive diplomacy. You begin restoring its power stance. As you work, a page enters with a scandalous whisper. The Austrian ambassador's wife wore the same wig to two events this week. Outrage, catastrophe, powdered anarchy. You feign shock, then carefully mark the wig in question as high risk and quietly move it to the lower shelf. Versailles is nothing if not political, and wigs, bless them, are passports to favor or exile. You pause for a breath. Powder floats in the golden light streaming through the arched window. You watch it settle over the wig, stands like soft, theatrical snow. Each one holds a story, a night, a secret. One saw the queen laugh until she snorted. Another heard the cardinal confess he missed his old mustache. And one, the one in the far corner, still singed, remembers the fireworks fiasco of '76. No one talks about that anymore. You shake off the memories and prep l'autorité for delivery. Final dusting. Symmetry check, ribbon alignment. You attach the little brass medallion to the inner lining. Just a discreet glint to remind the king this is the serious wig. The one that says, I have 15 titles and no time for your nonsense. You hand it off to the royal valet with a nod. He nods back, his expression a mixture of reverence and dread. You've done your part. The fate of diplomacy now rests on 3 pounds of sculpted horsehair and perfectly shaped indignation. It's barely noon. You roll your shoulders, wipe your brow, and take a bite of something that might be a plum tart or just a very dense wig sponge. Hard to say. Doesn't matter. You have 15 more wigs to clean, and at least 2 more secrets to overhear. You're halfway through adjusting the Duchess of Orleans' afternoon promenade wig, a rather clingy cascade of gray coils with a ribbon color that changes depending on the light and her mood when disaster strikes. It starts with a bang, followed by shouting, followed by the unmistakable thud of someone tripping over a chair they definitely placed themselves. You freeze mid-powder, A footman barrels through the wig room door, red faced, clutching a broken fan, and covered in what looks suspiciously like soup. The Dauphin's wig, he yells. Emergency. It's been. He lowers his voice dramatically. Sat on. You drop the powder puff because here's the thing. The Dauphin's wig, while small by adult standards, is an extremely precise construct of curls, lace trim, and subtle baby blue powder. It's designed to make him look both adorable and slightly intimidating, a future king with just the faintest aura of pout. You rush to the boy's dressing chamber, your assistant hot on your heels with the wig emergency kit, comb, ribbon glue, mini iron, and the ceremonial puff brush, extra soft for royal toddler scalps. Inside the chamber is chaos. The tutor is pale, the nursemaid is in tears, and the Dauphin himself is sulking behind a curtain, muttering things that are distinctly unprincely. You assess the damage. The wig is flattened. One side is matted. The decorative bow has been reconfigured into a sad lump that looks like it's questioning its life choices. And yes, it appears someone has, in fact, sat on it. Historians still argue whether young royals were subjected to full wig formalities or spared for comfort. You can confirm the answer is yes, unless someone important is watching. And today, everyone is watching. You work fast. First, steam. You hold the wig over a low heat basin, letting the crushed curls soften and re-expand like a wilted souffle trying to find itself again. Then gentle brushing, soft strokes, a little powder to hide the indentations. You retie the ribbon, swap the broken bow for a backup, and fluff the whole thing until it resembles authority and innocence once again. The Dauphin peeks from behind the curtain. He nods once. That's royal toddler for acceptable. Crisis averted. Back in the wig room, you return to the Duchess's promenade curls. They now seem tame in comparison. You recurl the side tufts and send them off with a valet who immediately drops the hatbox lid. You stare. He flees. Moments later, another note arrives. This one written in blotchy dramatic script, disaster at the salon. I need my afternoon wig immediately. If you send me that limp atrocity from yesterday, I will die. Mademoiselle de Turenne, you sigh, and now it's time for the politics of hair. You pull the drawers open. Inside are row upon row of labeled ribbons, powders of varying hues, ivory, dove, ash, rage, and scent vials used to signal everything from romantic availability to political neutrality. Yes, really. Today's request calls for the ambition set, a style featuring structured side curls, moderate height, and subtle lavender undertones. It whispers, I'm in favor with someone important, without naming names. You locate the wig, a lovely triple braid base with upward rolls, and begin reinforcing the frame. Mademoiselle de Turenne has a habit of fainting into her chaise when displeased, so you add an extra comb at the nape. As you work, your assistant babbles about a rumor that the Comtesse de Frossard has been secretly borrowing the Vicomtesse's evening wigs. You stop mid-curl. That's not borrowing, you say. That's treason. You send the wig out, then reach for your secret ledger, a dusty little notebook hidden beneath the drawer of mothballs and salted gloves. In it, you've tracked every hair crime of the court. Which duchess swapped styles? Who wore morning curls while secretly celebrating? Which counts natural-looking waves are in fact imported from a terrified goat in Provence. The court may forget, but you don't. You glance at the schedule. Up next, powdering by candlelight, because of course the evening will involve more hair. The Grand Salon is preparing for an impromptu poetry duel. Yes, that's a thing. Two noblemen yelling iambic threats while wearing velvet and trying not to sweat through their lace. You grab the candle kit, beeswax tapers, flint striker, and the dreaded night powder, a special formula designed not to smudge under torchlight. It's thicker, grippier, slightly sinister. If morning powder is a cloud, night powder is a dust storm with opinions. You arrive in the dressing chamber, which is part armory, part theatrical wing. One poet is pacing, muttering rhymes. The other is flexing in front of a mirror, adjusting his eyebrows like weapons. You style both with practiced neutrality. One wants a dramatic widow's peak. The other demands the curls of a man who's never lost a duel, even if he has. You finish. Light the candles. Offer them a final misting of rosewater and resolve. As they strut off to the salon, you take a moment to clean your tools. The candlelight flickers, casting shadows of giant ghostly wigs on the wall behind you. They sway gently, like powdered spirits rehearsing their lines. You exhale. Your lungs wheeze faintly in powdered protests, but the hair is holding. And for now, in Versailles, that is everything. It's now deep into the evening, the kind of hour when the candles burn low, the wine flows sideways, and half the palace begins misplacing both their dignity and their wigs. You, of course, remain on duty, because the hair never sleeps. You're summoned, yet again, to the far wing of the palace for what the note only refers to as an urgent restructuring. That's never good. That's the sort of language used when a lady's curls have deflated mid-minuet, or a count has attempted a spontaneous dance move with unfortunate aerodynamic consequences. You gather your kit, tuck a bottle of emergency pomade into your sash, and head off. You pass two dueling valets arguing over whose master invented the side ponytail. Spoiler, neither. And an exhausted servant carrying what appears to be a roast duck wearing a miniature wig. You nod. Versailles. The salon of distress turns out to be the Marquise de Fontenelle's. She's halfway through a card game, holding three queens and one faint smile. Her hair, however, has rebelled. Somehow, perhaps via a gust of scandal or a poorly timed flirtation with a gentleman's fan, her carefully structured side poofs have collapsed inward. She now resembles an extremely stylish croissant. She turns to you and simply says, "Fix it." You get to work. First, you remove the top layer of wilted powder, too damp, too sad, and lightly dab the base with your dry brush. Then comes the lift. Discreet combs pushed in beneath the structure, fingers guiding the curls back into their proud architectural sweep. "You know," she murmurs as you fluff, "I once danced with the Tsar in this wig." You nod. Of course she did. "Historians will say I wore peonies," she adds, "but they were roses. I just said peonies because it annoyed the Duchess." You add a fresh rose, lavender this time, subtle, mysterious, slightly petty. Crisis averted. As you back away, with a perfectly executed bow, she slips you a sugar-dusted biscuit from her sleeve. You accept it like a medal. Back in the hallway, you hear a familiar sound, the shuffle of the royal guards, which means only one thing. His Majesty is on the move, possibly headed to the mirrored hall, possibly for a midnight promenade. Either way, his wig must be checked. You rush to the vestibule, where the king stands beneath a golden chandelier, looking like an oil painting that just developed sentience. His wig tonight is l'éclipse, a dark, elegant cascade of curls that hints at mystery, wealth, and mild disapproval. You approach with your softest brush and begin a discreet once-over. The curls hold, the powder is even, The side sweep is sharp enough to pass judgment. He does not speak. But as you finish, he lifts a single eyebrow. That's basically a royal embrace. You step away, breath held, and return to your station with the quiet pride of a man who's just touched absolute power and didn't drop anything. Then, out of nowhere, a valet bursts in, eyes wide. We have a situation. You blink. Does it involve mice, fire, or powdered noblemen falling into fountains? No, he whispers. It's a toppling. Your blood runs cold. The Grand Opera Gala, still in full swing, has suffered an incident. A wig of such height, such complexity, has fallen. There are whispers of twisted ankles, broken illusions, and possibly a fainted violinist. You race to the scene, hairpins clinking like a knight's armor. Inside the gilded music hall, chaos. The Vicomtesse de Barenne is seated in disgrace, a wobble in her lower lip and nothing atop her head but her own hair, which is very fine, very flat, and now very, very public. The fallen wig lies nearby, like a collapsed souffle that once had dreams. You kneel beside it, inspecting the remains. The front curl frame is cracked. The internal wire scaffold has bent sideways. One of the silk butterflies, because of course it had butterflies, is now resting upside down, wings drooping. You gently collect the pieces. As you do, the room goes quiet. Dozens of powdered heads turn to watch you work. This is your moment. Versailles has no Oscars, no applause, but if you restore this wig in time for the finale aria, you will achieve something rarer. Whispered respect. You pull ribbon from your sash, slide a secret support comb into the left coil, dab emergency powder onto the base, and realign the core curls with a flick of your wrist. Then, without breaking eye contact with the crowd, you lift the restored wig and place it back on the Vicomtesse's head with such flourish that someone in the back gasps. A single clap, then another. Then the violinist, recovered, strikes a chord. You step back, nod once, and vanish behind a velvet curtain like a powdered ghost. Back in the wig room, you collapse into your chair. Your assistant offers you tea, cold as always, but sweet. You clink your cup to his, to structural reinforcements. He grins, because in Versailles, a wig may fall, but a good wig duster, never. You start the way every royal wig duster dreams not to, holding a broken comb, standing knee-deep in curling ribbons, and being scolded by a count whose hair has just declared mutiny. The count, Monsieur de Villiers, patron saint of excessive sideburns, insists his mourning wig be styled to resemble a glorious lion's mane, but dignified. What he's given you, however, is a limp pile of disheveled curls, half of which are fused together with something that smells suspiciously like goose grease. Fix it, he says, arms akimbo. You resist the urge to suggest he wear a hat and begin combing with infinite care. The curls protest. The goose grease resists. One stubborn knot causes your comb to snap in half like a breadstick at a bad picnic. He storms out. You remain behind, holding what used to be his dignity and wondering if hair can actually commit treason. Meanwhile, word spreads. Someone has seen the queen in her garden wig at dawn, without powder. This is Versailles-level scandal, like catching a duchess drinking plain water or a duke walking at a normal pace. You're summoned immediately to the queen's private retreat, where Her Majesty sits in a state of existential disarray, beneath a pink silk bonnet and a cloud of wilted curls. I went out to smell the roses, she murmurs. Then a pheasant startled me, and now I look like I've been in a duel with the wind. You bow deeply and pretend not to notice the rogue peony petal dangling from her temple. Your assistant, to his credit, begins arranging the supplies like he's preparing for surgery. You, the weary surgeon, begin detangling the morning disaster. As you work, she talks of poetry, of dreams, of how much easier life would be if humans were born with interchangeable hairpieces. You agree. Quietly. She doesn't realize your entire career is based on that premise. You restore her coiffure to something resembling royal composure. Neat waves, a soft front curl, and just a hint of lavender powder for freshness. She looks in the mirror and smiles. I feel composed again, she says. You pack your kit and back away, like a shadow in brocade. The queen's mood restored, Versailles may now continue spinning without toppling into powdered despair. Back in your chamber, which is also your workshop, closet, and dining nook, you're preparing for the afternoon parade of minor nobles. These are the unremarkable ones, the ones who still wear last season's styles and insist you make it look like the portrait. The portrait, of course, is 15 years out of date and contains more artistic flattery than anatomical truth. You begin work on the Baron d'Artois' modest periwig. It's supposed to signal humility. Instead, it just looks underfunded. You fluff. You pinch. You add a small side twist that suggests competence without ambition. It's a delicate thing, like seasoning a dish for a man who eats only bread. Mid-brush, another visitor arrives. This one unexpected. It's the royal perfumer, a man of immense ego, fragrant wrists, and a feathered cravat that defies logic. I need 3 wigs, he declares, infused with my latest creation. You sigh. Is it flammable? Only spiritually, he grins. You agree to the infusion and are handed a vial labeled Mystère de Lune. It smells like midnight and overconfidence. You test it on a practice curl and wait. The scent blooms roses, pepper, and faint almond. Acceptable. Barely. He insists on applying it himself. He dabs. He wafts. He monologues. Your assistant falls asleep upright. The perfumer departs in a trail of sparkles and self-admiration. You resume work, now in a room that smells like a poetic bakery. Just then a scroll arrives, sealed, embossed. An invitation. You open it slowly. It's from the Comte de Versailles. He's throwing a soirée thématique, a wig-themed party. You're invited. Not as a guest, of course, as a contestant. A challenge of height, curl, and wit, it reads. Winner shall be known as Maestro de la Poudre. You blink. It's a trap. Probably. But it's also an opportunity. You've spent years building everyone else's masterpieces. What if, for one night, you built your own? You imagine it. A wig of impossible structure. A cathedral of curls. Feathers arranged like the wings of victory. Ribbons in colors that don't even have names yet. Your fingers tingle. Your assistant stirs. We going? You smile. Yes, you say, we're going. Because sometimes even the wig duster gets to shine. It begins in secret. While the rest of Versailles dozes in post-luncheon torpor or lingers in salons arguing over the morality of asparagus, you retreat to your private nook with 2 brushes, 1 sketchbook, and a head full of foolish ambition. You draw. You erase. You whisper to yourself like a man planning a coup, because what you're creating is not just a wig, it's a statement, a monument, a glorious towering rebuttal to every count who sneered, every duchess who called your parting uneven, every cardinal who dared to sweat mid-sermon. You dub it l'insurmountable, the insurmountable, because this time they will not be able to look away. You sketch loops that defy gravity, spirals that double back into themselves, a crescent-shaped bang arching over a false pearl waterfall. There will be feathers. 6 from the ambassador's peacock if you can bribe the bird wrangler. And lace. So much lace the Pope might call it immodest. But you need materials, and time, and silence. You find the first in the bottom drawers, spools of forgotten ribbon, unused combs, and a bundle of unused blonde curls someone claimed were too honest. Time, well, you steal it between appointments, during long powder setting sessions, while your assistant is asleep behind the velvet curtain, muttering Latin phrases he's definitely made up. Silence. Not so much. Because just as you've begun stitching the first wire support into place, the door bursts open and a frantic lady's maid skids across the floor. Emergency, she gasps. Her Grace's wig. It's rebelling. You blink. Rebelling? She nods. It's uncooperative, flat, possibly damp. You set your tools down with the reluctance of a man asked to pause history and follow her back to the Duchess of Trevallon's private salon, where the woman herself sits in a sea of taffeta and crushed ego. Her wig is indeed in distress. It has slumped leftward in defeat. A front curl has unfurled. The powder has congealed into a grayish clump that suggests emotional trauma. You approach. She sighs. I opened a window, she admits. You nod as if this is understandable. It is not. In Versailles, air is a dangerous friend. You begin the recoiffuring. A little lift here, a retightened lace tuck there. You remove a dried rose petal and a single almond. As you work, she chatters about last night's party. Did you know, she whispers, the Duke of Savigny wore a lady's wig by mistake? Thought it was a new style. Too much port. You raise one eyebrow, just enough to say, I knew, but not so much that you seem pleased. She leans in closer. They say the Queen's been requesting fewer curls lately. Some think it's a statement. Others say her new chemist is suspicious of powder. You murmur something noncommittal and finish the last curl. She beams. Her hair is once again a monument to controlled chaos. You bow, exit, and make a beeline back to your lair. L'insurmontable await. You resume construction with vengeance. You braid. You pin. You invent a new technique you call air scaffolding, using hidden loops of horsehair to hold the top in place. You risk a dab of gold powder on the temple. It shimmers like destiny. You test the balance. You adjust the curve. You add a single pearl at the apex because it looks like hope. Your assistant wakes up long enough to mumble, You're not gonna win, you know. You smile. I know, you say, but I'll terrify them trying. The day melts into evening. Your hands cramp, your eyes water. But when you finally step back from the stand, it's done. L'insurmountable towers before you, bold, daring, slightly menacing. It could start rumors just by entering a room. It could halt conversation or cause nosebleeds. Either way, it is ready. You wrap it gently in soft linen, place it in the lacquered carrying box, and inscribe the lid with one word, tomorrow. Because tonight, you still have duties. The Queen is attending a candlelit reading. The wig must reflect intellectual sparkle with a soft, melancholy undertone. The bishop requires something stern but supple, and the Comtesse de Mirande has requested the sleepover style again, which you suspect is just code for don't ask questions, just curl it tight. You move through each task with practiced rhythm. Your mind is focused. Your heart, however, flutters every time you glance at the box in the corner. Historians still argue whether court artisans ever stepped into the spotlight, even briefly. Some say no. Silence was survival. Others whisper of exceptions, of one servant whose embroidery made the king cry, of another whose souffle was so perfect it earned a pension. You? You're betting on hair. At midnight, the palace quiets. Musicians pack up. Nobles yawn in French. Powder settles into the velvet of the night. You curl up beneath your workbench, wrapped in an old cloak that smells of mothballs and legacy. Tomorrow, you make your move. Not for fame, not for fortune, but for the sheer powdered joy of being unforgettable. The morning arrives with a vengeance. You're jolted awake not by a bell, not by the rustle of silk or a servant's polite cough, but by the unmistakable clang of your assistant knocking over the stand that held your coffee cup. Again. Sorry, he mutters, holding the empty cup like a confession. You rise, bleary eyed, but determined. Today is the day of the wig duel. Unofficial title, but everyone knows what it means. The Comte de Berceau's soiree may be framed as a friendly gathering, but beneath the wine and vials lurks the scent of pure powdered rivalry. You don your best work apron, the one without too many scorched corners. You retrieve l'insurmontable from its cocoon, peel back the linen wrap, and nearly weep. It's glorious. Still standing, still proud, still potentially classified as a safety hazard. The peacock feathers catch the light like an omen. The triple looped front curl curves forward like it's about to whisper secrets. The small pearl nestled at the crown glints with just enough arrogance to make a duchess nervous. You hold it gently, reverently. Your assistant whistles low. I've seen cathedrals less holy. You nod. The invitation says to arrive by noon. You plan to be early. But Versailles has other plans. Just as you begin packing the wig for transport, a page arrives. Urgent. The king's spaniel has taken ill. Not gravely, but gravely enough that the queen is in a state, and in her state she requires her comfort wig. A soft, simple style, just pale curls, subtle ribbon, and one very specific scent, vanilla, with a hint of crushed marigold. It's not a hard piece to prepare, but it is time consuming, and you have no marigolds. You send your assistant sprinting to the gardener. You, meanwhile, reconfigure the wig's lining, swap in the appropriate ribbons, and refresh the curls with a sigh and a flick of your wrist. The queen must not see the stress. She must only smell the comfort. You finish the wig with 3 minutes to spare and deliver it personally to her boudoir, where she waits with puffy eyes and a lapful of anxious dog. She nods. You bow. Her sigh of relief is your standing ovation. You sprint back. It's nearly noon. You burst into the wig room, grab the lacquer box containing l'insurmontable, and march toward destiny. Versailles, as always, makes the journey theatrical. You pass 2 card games, one minor shouting match over whose slippers are embroidered with real gold, and a spontaneous cello solo from a lady trying to impress a bored poet. You also sidestep a child carrying a full roast chicken on a silver tray, because nothing about this place ever makes sense. You reach the grand salon where the soiree is to be held. It is already teeming with guests, laughter, lace, perfume thick as ambition, and everywhere wigs, big ones, wide ones, glittering ones. You scan the room. The competition is fierce. The Duchesse de Sombreuil is sporting a piece inspired by Greek mythology, curls sculpted into the shape of Mount Olympus, complete with a tiny ceramic Zeus poking out of a lightning cloud. Across from her, the Marquis de Janvier wears a seafoam green monstrosity shaped like a warship. The sails are real lace. The cannons are functional. You duck instinctively, and then the Comte appears, resplendent in gold, a sash that probably violates physics, and his signature hair, La Cascade Royale. 6 tiers, 3 ribbons, 1 falcon feather. He greets you with a smile that's almost kind. Ah, the artisan. You bow deeply. He gestures to the presentation area, a long mirror lined dais flanked by powdered judges and a curious cat. You step forward. You lift l'insurmontable from its box, slowly, with ceremony. Gasps ripple through the crowd. The peacock feathers shiver. The triple curls gleam. The gold dusted loops catch the sunlight streaming through the stained glass like the very finger of God stroking your craftsmanship. You place it on the display stand. Silence. Then, a single Mon Dieu from someone near the back. You turn and wait. The judges whisper, murmur, measure. Historians still argue whether artisans were ever allowed into these circles, into the light, into the judgment. But here you are, standing among powdered giants, holding your comb like a sword. One judge, a terrifying woman in a corset that could fell a tree, leans forward. Did you design this alone? You nod. She raises one eyebrow. The lace, burgundy? Scraps, you reply. She nods once. Approval, perhaps, or indigestion. The Comte steps forward. We will announce the winner after the promenade, he says. And just like that, the room returns to its swirl of silk and scandal. You retreat to the side, heart racing. Your assistant appears, panting. I missed it. You hand him the comb. You were here in spirit. He examines the wig on display. It's beautiful, he whispers. You shrug. It'll probably lose to the wig with fireworks. But somewhere deep inside, a curl of pride unfurls. You did something bold, something foolish, something yours. And in Versailles, that might just be the highest hair of all. You don't win. Of course you don't. The winning wig, an absolute travesty of engineering by the Marquis de Janvier, is a literal miniature garden complete with live birds, a functioning music box, and what you suspect is a very confused rabbit peeking out from beneath a marzipan hedge. When the music started playing and the wig began to rotate slowly, powered by an internal crank system involving 3 ribbons and the world's smallest valet, the judges gasped, swooned, and immediately surrendered to spectacle. Your l'insurmontable didn't sing, it didn't rotate, it didn't chirp or bloom or contain edible decor. It just stood there, tall, elegant, untamed, a silent tower of defiance. You're handed an honorable mention scroll, which the Comte insists is a testament to the raw skill of the working class. You smile politely while imagining fluffing his next wig with glue. Your assistant pats your back. We'll win next time. You stare at the rabbit, now nibbling someone's boutonniere. There won't be a next time. And you mean it, because the truth is, you're exhausted. Not just from the competition, from all of it. The wigs, the powder, the politics woven into every braid and bun. You've been chasing perfection in horsehair for years. And today, for once, you let yourself wonder. Why? Why are you inhaling talc to sculpt status symbols for people who wouldn't recognize you outside of your apron? Why are you burning your fingertips on curling rods to make someone's mistress feel taller? You return l'insurmontable to its box, slower this time, not sad, just done. You trudge back to the wig room and find it in absolute chaos. Someone has raided the queen's wig vault, not all of it, just enough to cause panic. 5 wigs are missing, including her coiffure de la lune, the enormous moon-shaped evening piece with pearl dust and lace comets. You know the one. You brush that thing for a week. There's speculation, panic, a mouse hunt, but for humans. Rumors swirl that it's the work of rebellious pamphleteers, or rival nobility, or possibly that weird cousin of the Dauphin who collects spoons and political secrets. You're summoned to the scene, because of course you are. The Queen's attendants are frantic. One is weeping. Another keeps dropping hairpins and muttering something about the end times. You survey the scene. No forced entry, no broken locks. You notice something odd. The trays are disturbed, but only the unworn wigs are gone. The ones meant for future appearances. The symbolic ones. The planned power. You say nothing, but your brain is spinning faster than a powdered fan at high noon. You return to your quarters and open the ledger, the secret one, the one where you record wig measurements, secret exchanges, unflattering powder, preferences, and yes, suspicions. You flip back to a note made months ago. Late night inquiry, unfamiliar voice, asked about symbols of loyalty, requested access to Coiffure de la Lune, declined. You had forgotten about it, brushed it off as a drunk chamberlain looking for a prank. Now you're not so sure. Historians still argue whether the collapse of royal favor began in salons or salons with wigs. You've always believed it started in the dressing rooms, where ambition is powdered into every part. And right now, someone is trying to rewrite that script. You're not a guard, you're not a spy, but you are the one who knows every hairpiece in this palace by weight, scent, and curl count. So you begin your own quiet investigation. First stop, the laundry chamber, where wigs are sometimes mistakenly sent for cleaning. The launders are suspicious of you. They think you're a snob because you once refused to let them boil a velvet-lined ponytail wig. You find nothing. Next, the abandoned musician's loft above the rehearsal hall, occasionally used for trysts, secret meetings, and very bad flute solos. Still nothing. Then, just before giving up, you head to the old stage wardrobe vault. No one uses it anymore. It's full of moths, dusty costumes, and regrets sewn into brocade. You open the door, and there they are. 5 royal wigs perched on crates like exiled queens. A candle burns nearby. A trail of powder leads back toward the wall, where a narrow servant's passage winds away like a guilty ribbon. Someone hid them here. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. You don't touch the wigs. You just sit down beside them, careful not to smudge the powder, and let your brain wrap around it. This was a message, a symbolic theft. The future appearances, the royal image, the carefully constructed narrative had just been uncurled. Someone doesn't want the queen to appear in power. Someone wants her hair, not her head, absent from court. You look down at Coiffure de la Lune and whisper, what did you represent that made you worth stealing? The wig, as usual, offers no reply, but in your gut, something shifts. You're not just a duster anymore. You're in the middle of a game, and your brushes just became weapons. You return the wigs before dawn, quietly, methodically. Each one returned to its pedestal with the care of a priest restoring relics to their altar. You fluff the curls, retuck the lace, adjust the bows so they don't look like they've been part of a late-night rebellion. No one sees you do it, which is ideal. You're not ready to answer questions you don't have answers for. Yet. By sunrise, the queen's wig vault looks untouched. Pristine, loyal, powdered into submission. But you know better. You didn't leave a note. You didn't say who retrieved them. Versailles will whisper about the theft for weeks, maybe longer. Some will blame mice. Others, political rivals. A few, inexplicably, will suggest ghosts. You let them, because you have something more important to do. survive the day. And not just any day. Today is the king's formal garden reception. One of those events where even the lawn gets powdered. You're due to prepare 14 wigs before lunch, and that's just for the nobles. There's also a miniature set of coiffures for the queen's dogs. Yes, plural. And yes, you designed them. Don't judge. You begin with the Duke of La Roche's notorious boucle de guerre, a military-themed wig with soft cannonball curls and a shockingly realistic siege diagram embroidered along the sides. The Duke wants just a bit more bravado. You tighten the side ringlets and add a discreet crimson streak. It screams, victory, but at what cost? Next, the twins. The Comtesses de Verneuil, mirror images of powdered perfection, demand symmetrical wigs, identical in every detail, but with bows facing opposite directions. So, one of us always leads, but no one knows who. You work in tandem, adjusting the curls like twin hurricanes with matching lightning bolts. They giggle in unison when you add the signature pearl clip at the crown. You always know, one whispers. You always see, the other echoes. You nod. It's true. Historians still debate how much servants like you observed, how much you knew. But Versailles forgets. When you hold someone's head steady for 40 minutes while adjusting their secret curls, they tell you everything, even things they don't mean to. Case in point, the bishop. His wig today is unusually large, stiff, slightly twitchy. You lift it and discover a sealed letter hidden in the inner lining. Fold it neatly, smelling faintly of cedar and sin. You hesitate, then slip it into your apron. You'll open it later. You finish styling the bishop's hair into what you call penitent with authority. A look that says, I might forgive you, but I'm judging your shoes. He blesses you with a curt nod. You don't need his approval. You move on to the queen's dogs. Their wigs are easier in a way. Less expectation, more curls. The smallest spaniel, Marzipan, squirms as you fasten the miniature powder. Puff curls to her ears. You gently hold her still and whisper, one of us will get out of this. Girl, it might be you. She sneezes. Back in the wig room, you finally take a break. 10 minutes of sitting on a crate, eating a tart that may or may not be intended for the Dutch envoy. Your assistant joins you, powder smudged on his cheek, shirt half tucked, grinning. Someone said the Comte's wig got too tall and hit a chandelier, he reports. You nod. Poetic. He looks at you. You've been quiet. You shrug, then pull out the letter. He gasps appropriately. You unfold it. Slowly, carefully. It reads, the crown is not only worn above the eyes, the battle begins at the scalp. Prepare for change. No signature, no seal. You stare at it, dumbfounded. Not because it's ominous, but because it's familiar. The phrasing. You remember something years ago. A traveling wigmaster. Elderly, mysterious. He trained you for one summer, taught you the art of the double tuck, how to hide a message in a braid, how to read the room by the shine of the curls. He used to say things like that. You assumed he was just poetic or bored, but now you wonder, is this message from him or someone else who remembers the scalp wars of old? You fold the letter and tuck it back into your apron, not because you're scared, because you're intrigued. A movement is brewing, and it's happening where no one expects, between the powder and the pins, among the unseen hands, behind the wigs. You walk to the window. In the garden below, nobles twirl, laugh, lie, their heads crowned with clouds of deception and beauty. And somewhere down there is the next message, waiting to be curled into history. It starts with a curl, not metaphorically, a literal curl. Early the next morning, You're inspecting the Viscountess d'Erlein's morning wig, coiffure de matin pâle, a delicate affair with subtle lace framing and a hidden side pocket for herbs. Don't ask. When you notice something unusual, tucked behind the second rear loop is a slip of paper, tiny, folded 3 times, barely visible. You glance around. The Viscountess is currently arguing with her reflection about the exact shade of blue her dress is. So you take your chance. You unfold the note. One sentence. The tallest wigs cast the longest shadows. You fold it again. Now it's confirmed. This isn't coincidence. This is a pattern, a network, a code. Someone is using the wig room to send messages, and they're choosing you as the messenger. You try to play it cool. Return to fluffing the curls. Nod when the Viscountess demands more melancholy in the back layers. You give her wistful volume. She sighs with satisfaction. You exit. Back in the wig vault, you double check the others. 3 more messages, each hidden in places only you would look. Under the bow flap of a powdered bun, inside the inner lining of the coiffure du silence, worn only during diplomatic deadlocks. One folded inside a hairnet like a message in a powdered bottle, each note cryptic. Power unpins itself from the roots. The head that obeys is no less heavy. Even the powdered forget their weight. They read like poetry, or prophecy, or the worst self help book ever written. You sit for a moment, breathing in the thick air of talc, cedar oil, and conspiracy. Who's doing this? Why now? And what exactly are you meant to do? Historians still argue about when the first whisper of revolution began. Was it a bread riot, a tax edict, a pamphlet shaped like a duck? But maybe, just maybe, it started here, with curls, coded messages, and a tired artisan wondering if he was part of something bigger. You hear your assistant stumble in, dropping a jar of blue powder. Did you take the bishop's wig? He asks. No, you say slowly. He frowns. It's missing. Another one? You set down your brush. Now you're paying attention. You head to the bishop's dressing room, where chaos has once again blossomed. The bishop is pacing, muttering about sabotage and divine impersonation. A frantic footman is explaining to a guard that, no, he didn't see anything weird, unless you count the marmalade incident. The bishop turns to you. I need my wig. Not a wig, my wig. The one with the celestial lift and the contemplative curl. You nod slowly. I'll find it. Because you suspect you will, eventually. You begin retracing your mental map, not just of wig locations, but of sentiments. Who's been whispering what? Who looked too quiet this week? You remember Madame de Rochefort, normally silent, always proper, asking about the weight of ecclesiastical powder. You thought she was flirting. Now you wonder. You visit her quarters under the pretense of discussing hairpins. She's not there, but her dressing table holds a mirror, 3 open ribbon cases, and, curiously, one ecclesiastical wig, hastily recoiffed and resting beneath a perfumed scarf. You don't touch it. You just smile to yourself, nod once, and say out loud to the empty room, found it. Because this isn't theft. Not anymore. This is staging. Someone is using wigs as signals. Public symbols worn privately. Misused, reworn, swapped, or not worn at all. It's subtle rebellion, the kind Versailles isn't trained to see. They watch the crowns, not the curls. You return the bishop's wig just in time for him to bless a tray of eclairs. You reattach the contemplative curl with a satisfied sigh. The curl too seems to sigh. By evening, the salon is buzzing. Not about politics, not about war, about hair. Did you hear the Marquise wore mourning braids to a celebration? I swear the Duchess's wig was 6 inches shorter. What's she trying to say? Someone saw the Queen powder herself, by hand. Every shift, every curl is being read now, like poetry or threats. You did this. Or maybe you're just the brush that made it visible. Back in your chamber, you light a candle and pull out the notes. Line them up. Read them again. They're not instructions. They're not even messages. They're warnings. You're not just a witness anymore. You're the courier, the interpreter, the powder covered go between for something too quiet to name and too loud to ignore. And all you can think is, what happens when the next wig goes missing? Or worse, what happens when someone wears nothing at all? The next morning, you're summoned not by a note or a page or even a panicked footman. You're summoned by silence. Unusual silence, because Versailles, even at dawn, hums. Servants whisper. Shoes echo. Powder brushes flutter like tiny wings. But today, as you step into the corridor toward the Queen's chambers, there's nothing but the faint creak of parquet beneath your soles. You know something is wrong before the door even opens. Inside, the Queen sits without a wig. Let that sink in. No curls, no powder, not even a headscarf or perfumed bonnet. Just her hair, shorter than rumor would suggest, darker than imagined, softly unstyled and quietly regal. The ladies in waiting hover near the walls, unsure if this is a fashion statement, a mental break, or a political earthquake. You step in slowly. She looks at you and smiles. I don't want one today. Your mouth opens, closes. You nod, you bow, you exit. And the world, your world, starts to tilt. Because this isn't a fashion choice. Not really. It's a signal. And like every well-placed curl or deliberate ribbon misalignment in Versailles, signals don't go unnoticed. Within the hour, it begins. The Countess d'Alvenay arrives for her midday styling and requests a simpler coil, something more natural. She uses the word like it's new in her mouth, something delicate and dangerous. The Duc d'Ambrel insists on fewer side poofs. Too fussy, he mutters. Even the Chamberlain, known for his triple flounce powdered monstrosities, asks for just the one wave. You say nothing, but your hands move slower now. You're listening with your fingers. By evening, it's no longer subtle. The Comtesse de Brizou appears at the theater with nothing but a silk ribbon in her real hair. Real. Unpowdered. Uncoiled. There's an audible gasp. Someone drops a goblet. A lute player forgets their chord. The ripple is unstoppable. Versailles, built on artifice, is shedding its skin, one lock at a time. Historians will argue, as always. Some will say the revolution began with bread, or taxes, or pamphlets. But you'll know it started here, with a curl left uncurled, a ribbon left untied, a queen who said no wig today. Your assistant catches on quickly. Should I prep the Duchess's midnight ringlets? He asks. You glance at the schedule, then at the growing list of cancellations. It's been edited in real time, names crossed out, events changed from formal to intimate, notes scribbled hastily, no hairpiece, casual plait, soft crown only. You shake your head. No need, you say. And he says nothing more, just sits beside you, polishing a comb you may never use again. You finally return to your quarters. If you can call a room with 6 wig stands and a faint odor of vinegar quarters, and collapse into the chair you've used for nearly a decade. You stare at your tools, the brushes, the ribbons, the powders. They look tired, not from wear, from era. Because deep in your bones you feel it. This is the beginning of the end. Not of style, not of ceremony, but of control. Wigs were never just wigs. They were declarations, hiding places, thrones, disguises. To wear one was to submit to Versailles. To remove one, that's rebellion. You pull out the messages again, reread the last one. The tallest wigs cast the longest shadows. You finally understand. The hair was never the symbol, it was the shadow. The real revolution, that's in what's left when the powder clears. That night, as the palace dozes beneath silk and uncertainty, you do something you haven't done in years. You style your own hair, not a wig. Your real hair. It's uneven, slightly frizzy. One patch refuses to curl, but it's yours. You look in the mirror and you smile because tomorrow you might not be a wig duster anymore. Tomorrow you might be something else, something freer, something messier, something more human. The next morning you walk through Versailles bareheaded. No cap, no powdered covering, just your own unruly mop of hair, slightly flattened from sleep, stubborn at the temples, with one cowlick that defies both gravity and protocol. And the palace notices. Oh, it notices! First, the footman. Eyes widen. One of them does a double take so sharp he walks straight into a candelabrum. Then, the laundry girls, whispering behind linen sheets as you pass. Not cruelly, curiously, like they're watching a bird they thought couldn't fly. Finally, the nobles. At breakfast service, you enter the East Wing salon to deliver a repaired hairpiece for the Comte de Gramont and are met with a hush that spreads like frost on silver. No one says a word, but they all look. The Comte, in full regalia from the chin down, but conspicuously missing his usual ivory pompadour, raises a spoon halfway to his lips and pauses. I see we're trying something new, he says dryly. You smile. Only following court trends, monsieur. A few courtiers snort into their tea. One applauds very quietly. You leave the room lighter than you entered. By midday, others are following suit. You're not the start. The queen was, but you've become visible. A woman in a soft braid glides past you in the north corridor. A steward carries a tray with a simple bun perched atop. No powder, no lace. Even the stable master has abandoned his usual horsehair cue for a rough ponytail that makes him look like a revolutionary with hay allergies. And the whispers begin again, not about what's worn, but what's missing. No one says revolution, not yet, but they say change. They say modern. They say breathable. It's catching faster than lice after a masquerade. You take lunch in your quarters. Well, you try. Half an apple tart and a lukewarm cup of something herbal that your assistant claims is focus enhancing. It tastes like boiled sock. He appears beside you with a grin. Guess what? You raise an eyebrow. They want you at the Queen's chamber. Personally. You blink. Now? No, now. You dash a powder smudge from your cheek, habit, straighten your vest, formality, and hurry. Her chamber is quiet. Still no wig. Today her hair is loosely tied back, falling in soft waves that no powdered confection could rival. She's reading. A real book. No lace cover. She looks up, smiles. I want something styled, she says softly. But not like before. You nod. Something grounded, regal, but real. You understand instantly, and you begin. You dampen the hair just slightly, brushing it back from her face. You twist small coils at the sides, not to hide anything, just to frame. You let the back fall, natural, with a subtle wave. At the crown, you fasten a simple ribbon, pale blue, no diamonds, no deception. She watches in the mirror. It's strange, she says. What is? Feeling the air on your scalp. You pause, then reply, it means you're still alive. She laughs. Not loudly, but honestly. As you finish, she reaches up and touches the style, her style, with one hand. No approval nods, no royal decree, just silence and gratitude. Historians still argue about when monarchs began to lose their divine polish. Some say it was the taxes. Others point to military failures or love affairs too public to forgive. But you'll always remember this moment: a queen who chose simplicity and a servant who gave it shape. You step back, bow, and leave her chamber with fingers that still tingle, not from powder or heat, but from truth. Outside, your assistant is waiting. Well, she liked it. He whistles. You're practically the hair of the people now. You smirk. Careful. That's how you get guillotined. He winces. Too soon? Too early. That night, as the palace bustles with subdued confusion and the powder salesmen begin muttering about market shifts, you pull out your tools for what might be the last time. Brush, comb, ribbon. You run your fingers over them like old friends, faithful but tired. Then you pack them away, not forever, but for now, because the tide has turned, and even the most loyal curls can't hold back the flood. It begins with rain, not a storm, not a downpour worthy of Greek metaphor or court poetry, just a persistent, soaking drizzle that creeps in through window panes, saturates hems, and ruins everything with quiet efficiency. Versailles isn't built for rain. The palace leaks confidence when it gets damp. And worse, so do the wigs. You wake up to chaos. Not revolution, just wet powder. A footman arrives at your door looking like a drowned chicken, holding what used to be a rather elegant auburn updo. She didn't make it, he says, placing the soggy mass on your work table. Countess's hair slipped off mid-promenade into the fountain. A goose swam away with the ribbon. You nod solemn. Any casualties? Just pride. You set to work salvaging what you can, curling the limp sections around warm rods, blotting out moisture with crushed linen, whispering small apologies to the drowned structure. Some wigs are beyond repair. This one, barely holding on, but the bigger storm is yet to come. Around mid-morning, you hear it. Not thunder, not shouting. Laughter. From the Queen's salon? You haven't heard her laugh in weeks. You follow the sound like a moth drawn to strange warmth. You peek through the half-open door. Inside, no wigs, no formality, just a circle of nobles, women and men alike, bareheaded or wearing simple braids, soft waves, real hair. They're laughing, drinking chocolate. One of them is reciting terrible poetry. The queen wipes a tear of amusement from her cheek. A courtier spots you. Oh, come in, she calls. We were just discussing hair disasters. You step in, slowly, cautiously. The queen gestures to a chair. We're sharing our most humiliating wig moments, she says with a grin. Yours must be extensive. They all turn to you, and for the first time in years, you're not the help, not the shadow, not the ghost in the powder room. You're invited. You sit. You clear your throat. Well, you begin. There was the time the Dauphin's wig caught fire. Twice. Gasps, laughter, and the incident with the ambassador's wife, who wore her husband's ceremonial queue by mistake and spent the entire evening giving political speeches no one asked for. More laughter. A few spilled cups. One delighted wheeze from a baroness. You lean back, and something inside you unwinds, because this is what they never teach you. In the servant's wing, power can be held with poise or with performance, but sometimes it's held by being real first. Historians won't remember this moment. They'll write about treaties, about battles and borders, but they'll forget the room where the wigs came off and the people came forward. Later, As the circle breaks up, the queen stops you at the door. Do you think, she says softly, there's a way to keep the elegance without the architecture? You smile. Yes. She nods. That evening, you receive requests for softened styles, crownless curls. One lady sends a sketch of herself without adornment and asks, can this be beautiful? You write back, already is. Outside, the rain continues. You walk through the courtyard with your assistant, who's carrying a basket of half dried wigs and a scroll of refund requests from three disgruntled viscounts. Things are changing fast, he says. You glance up at the gray sky. No, you say. They've been changing for a long time. We just finally stopped pinning them in place. The laundry maid you pass is wearing a tulip behind her ear. The stable boy you've never spoken to has a tiny braid down his neck. And in the reflecting pool, you see your own face. No powder, no disguise, just tired eyes. And your real hair, wind tousled, damp, unapologetic. You like it? That night, before you sleep, you take one last look at the tallest wig in your collection. L'insurmontable. Still magnificent. Still dusted with ambition. You leave it uncovered. Let the dust settle. Tomorrow someone might ask to borrow it for a museum, or it might become a nest for the mice. Either way, its job is done. And yours? Yours is just beginning. You never thought you'd be brushing hair for a pamphlet printer. Yet here you are, standing in a cluttered attic near the Rue Saint-Honoré, comb in hand, smoothing back the wiry ink-stained strands of a man who refers to himself only as Claude, while a printing press clatters behind him like a mechanical beast dreaming of liberty. How do I look? He asks, grinning through missing teeth and smudged spectacles. Like an underfunded revolution, you reply. He laughs, and you keep brushing, because you're not in Versailles anymore. Not officially exiled, yet. But you've stepped beyond the gilded walls, left behind the courts, the powder, the ceremonial loops of duty. All it took was one conversation with the queen, a smile and a whisper. If you ever wish to see Paris, now you see it, and smell it, and hear it, in the calls of street vendors, the clomp of muddy hooves, the ceaseless grind of people trying to mean something. You didn't leave with much. A trunk, a few tools, a letter of reference written in deliberately vague language, an artist of discretion with intimate knowledge of high structures, public and private. But you've made it work, because hair is still hair, even without a throne beneath it. And suddenly everyone wants you, not just nobles, people, artists, orators, a baker's daughter who wants curls that say independence, not indulgence, a playwright who needs his actor's hair to look like storm clouds full of promise, a quiet seamstress with a scar along her scalp who asks, can you make it not the first thing they see? You do, every time. Because years of sculpting powdered monuments for the indifferent elite has taught you something they never meant to teach. Everyone wants to feel seen, not just noticed. Seen. Even Claude, who hands you a folded flyer titled The People Rise and says, it's tomorrow, you know? You nod. The salons have turned into circles of discourse. The lace is coming off. The wigs, what's left of them, now gather dust in corners of rooms filled with real hair, real thoughts, and occasionally, real anger. Historians might never trace the movement back to the hair, but you could, because you watched it fall apart first. Curls growing shorter, powder fading, hairstyles once built for intimidation now giving way to intimacy. It began as fashion, but fashion has always been code, and you were its translator. Back in your Paris apartment, you sit by the window with your assistant, still by your side, now with slightly better posture and a growing fondness for republic-flavored arguments. He's sketching, What are you drawing? You ask. Hair, he says. You raise an eyebrow. He smirks. For the people. You look over. Simple styles, honest ones. A bun that could belong to a teacher. A tousled look for a violinist. A braid that leaves room for laughter. And one, your favorite, a child's head of curls, unbrushed, unapologetic. You sip your tea, no longer herbal sock water, thank heavens, and lean back. Downstairs, someone knocks. A woman with strong shoulders and ink on her fingers. They said you do honest hair, she says. You nod. She sits. You comb. Her curls are stubborn, fierce, beautiful. She asks nothing. You ask nothing. But when she looks in the mirror and smiles, you know this is your new Versailles. No gold, no velvet, just faces that matter, hair that breathes, truth unpinned. The Queen wrote once after you left, a letter sealed in blue wax, unsigned. I sometimes miss the weight, but not the silence. You keep it in your drawer, next to a ribbon, a broken comb, and a tiny pearl from L'Insurmontable, still gleaming, still yours. Even now, years later, you sometimes reach for the powder puff before realizing you no longer need it. Muscle memory is a stubborn creature. You live above a bookshop now. Your window overlooks the narrow alley where a boy plays fiddle in the mornings and a woman sells roasted chestnuts with a laugh that makes strangers stop. Your hands have softened, not from disuse, but from use of a different kind, gentler styles, simpler gestures. No more towering wigs held aloft by scaffolds of anxiety. No more hiding messages in braid seams. Just hair, real, tangled, sometimes gray, sometimes glorious. Once in a while, an old client finds you, a faded duchess, now wearing linen instead of brocade, asking if you still have her favorite ribbon. You do. A former valet, sheepishly requesting a trim before he proposes to the pastry girl 2 floors down. You take them all. You never ask about Versailles. They rarely bring it up, except the Queen. She writes once a year. Nothing flowery, just updates. Sometimes a sketch. Last letter, she enclosed a pressed violet. For the curls that weren't lies, she wrote. You keep that one folded inside a mirror frame. You don't miss the grandeur. But sometimes, when it's quiet, you close your eyes and still feel the tickle of powder in your nose, the way candlelight shimmered through peacock feathers, the rustle of anticipation when a room turned to see a woman enter with 5 feet of ambition on her head, and you smile because you were there. In the dust, the curls, the hush behind the curtain, you built cathedrals out of hair. You saw revolutions begin not with shouts, but with silence, with a ribbon untied, a curl uncoiled, a queen's scalp meeting the air, and you, the duster, became the chronicler, not with pen, but with comb. You still cut hair, on most days. You still brush gently, talk less than people expect, and listen more than they realize. You still offer tea, now properly steeped, and you still keep a few old wigs in a chest beneath the bed, not because you need them, because they remind you that things change. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you get to help them change. The boy with the fiddle below starts a new tune, something wistful. You lean out the window. Your assistant, now a barber in his own right, in love with a painter and perpetually late, waves up. Client downstairs, he calls, says she wants something classic but subversive. You grin. Send her up. She arrives. She sits. You comb, and the world turns again. So now, here you are, lying back, breathing slower, letting the candlelight in your mind grow soft and golden. The powdered halls of Versailles have faded into the distance. The wigs have been boxed. The brushes have been set down. And the people, the real people, have stepped forward, bareheaded beneath the changing sky. You picture the quiet swish of fabric through candlelit corridors, the faint tickle of talc in the air, the weight of secrets stitched into silk ribbons and looped into curls. You were there for all of it, a witness, a participant, a quiet architect behind the scenes. And now, as you drift, remember the feel of a comb sliding gently through hair, the rhythm of breath as the palace rose and fell with each passing season, the small victories whispered between appointments, the soft laughter shared over spilled powder and misplaced pins. You did more than style wigs. You helped people see themselves. You helped them remove what they no longer needed. And perhaps, in some small, immeasurable way, you helped history uncoil itself too. Now, there's no need for powdered drama or whispered conspiracies. Just you, here, now, breathing, resting, safe. The palace has grown quiet. The curls have settled, and somewhere beneath the moonlight, a queen sleeps with her own hair upon her pillow, and so do you. End of script. Sweet dreams.